What's going on, guys, and welcome to another video. This one started out so innocently as a quick how-to on how to change the wheel speed sensor on your Mark 5 GTI, and it really quickly spiraled out of control. We are going to start with the how-to on how to change the wheel speed sensor, but this is the story on how a £13 wheel speed sensor cost me over £300. So yeah, over to me with the how-to. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another video. Nice quick video today, just a quick how-to on how to change the wheel speed sensor on your Mark 5 Golf GTI. Now, typical symptoms of a bad wheel speed sensor are lights on the dash, so you'll have your ABS light, your traction control light, and your low tyre pressure warning light all come on at the same time. Another way to diagnose the wheel speed sensor fault is to use one of these little OBD readers. Now, for those of you who haven't seen these kind of things before, this is a Caliper one, which I think I got off Amazon. I can't remember how much it was, but I'll post a link in the description below. And essentially, all it does is plug into your OBD port and almost acts as like a fault code reader, and you can make some various customization tweaks using it. So I'll plug this in to my OBD port down here. And then this is what it will look like once you've gone on the Caliper app and the OBD reader is plugged into the port. So once it's all connected up, you can then click on the diagnose icon, and then it'll start to run through the basic diagnostics. It'll essentially search all the car's ECUs and bring up any fault codes. And you can see here that my car's got a couple of fault codes with the engine, the transmission, the ABS, and so on. So you can see here with the ABS, right rear wheel speed sensor. You can also go ahead and just hit the reset button to clear off any fault codes. You can see my transmission faults have gone then. There's no point in clearing the wheel speed sensor because, well, we know it's broken. But one of these OBD readers is a good idea just to see things that, well, you wouldn't usually see with your eyes. So yeah, obviously the fault code is now diagnosed. I've just gone on eBay and bought a new wheel speed sensor. I'll drop the link in the description below for that. It was only quite a cheap part, which is quite fortunate because this is the second one I've done now. I've done the other side before, and now this one has finally gone. So the next step is to just jack the car up and get the wheel off. So yeah, let's do it. So the wheel is now off the car. The wheel speed sensor is essentially this little cable here that goes round the back and into this electrical connector, which should clip off. You might need a screwdriver on it. Yep, I think I probably will need a little flathead. It is also just held on by this little Torx bit down here. I've forgotten which one it is. I've not figured that out yet, but I'll just drop it on screen. So yeah, I'm going to get these I'm going to get this clip out, get this Torx bit off, and see if we can wiggle the thing out. So this is just me getting that Torx bit out with the T30 socket and then just taking it out with my fingers. After that, you just want to get a nice flathead screwdriver and just start to prise it out. I managed to prise it out from these two locations here. Whatever you will do, you don't want to snap it. And that is it, guys. That is the old one off, compare it to the new one. And you can see actually that it looks like it's been catching on something. Hang on, let me just get it in focus. You can actually see it's worn away there, which could be a sign of bigger problems. So yeah, turns out the inside of the wheel bearing had actually started to corrode, and that was causing a high spot on the wheel speed sensor. You can see this little endoscope thingy here that my dad had that we plugged into his phone. We put that where the wheel speed sensor was, and where you can almost see the rust and the raised surface on the inside of the wheel bearing there. So pretty much what happens is this is your wheel bearing, and the outer edge of it runs against the wheel speed sensor. Now there's probably only a millimetre or two of clearance between the wheel speed sensor and the wheel bearing. So over time the wheel bearing starts to corrode, and that has resulted in a high spot on that little ring. So I found that out the hard way because, well, I put the new wheel speed sensor on, put the wheel back on, pulled off my driveway, and well, it broke straight away. And this is where things got expensive. And to be honest, it was unnecessarily expensive because I was under the impression whatever I did to one side, I may as well just do to the other side as preventive maintenance. But you can see here I've got new wheel bearings, some racing brake fluid, and a caliper rebuild kit, as my caliper had been sticking on the passenger side. But honestly guys, this isn't even everything. Please stay tuned to see what I ended up buying in the end. I've also got a brand new caliper for this driver's side that I'm going to do at the same time, so let's do it. So back onto the driveway, and this time I put it on axle stands because I thought I was going to drain the brake fluid and do both calipers at the same time. But if you're only doing one caliper, you can just get away with jacking up the side of the car so you've got that one wheel off the ground. Apologies for the constant voiceovers over these clips guys. I did really struggle with the wind noise when filming this entire video, so you have just got a lot of me talking over my clips. But yeah, anyway, straight onto the job, let's do it. So in order to get the wheel bearing off, you've got to take the discs off. And in order to get the discs off, you've got to take the calipers and the carriers off. First things first, you're going to want to remove this cap from the front of the wheel bearing. So all I did was just get a flathead screwdriver and a little rubber mallet and just tapped it out. Most wheel bearings come with a new one of these, so don't worry about bending it. Then you're going to come around the back of the hub assembly and we're going to work on removing these two M14 spline bolts, or M14 triple square, whatever you want to call them. There's one at the top and one at the bottom, and these are a nightmare to get at. There's a chance that they may never have been off on your car, so when you actually get the spline socket into the bolt, make sure you get it in there nice and tight and don't let it round off whatever you do. If you have a ramp, I hate you because this is going to be so much easier, but this is the contraption we had to use to actually get enough leverage and enough space to do this on the driveway. I had to knock through the M14 spline a little bit in order to get a 14mm spanner on it, and then have my dad swing off the handle of the socket whilst I tried to swing off the spanner, and eventually we managed to get it out. But now those nightmares are out of the way, it's time to remove the caliper slides from the caliper. This is just a 15mm spanner on the 15mm nut, and then a 13mm on the end, and just kind of work them against each other to loosen them and then remove the slides. Then you should just be left with the caliper, and the carrier should be able to be removed quite easily. Just support your caliper and then you're left with the brake disc. Remove that tiny little T27 Torx bit, remove the brake disc, and then you're left with the wheel bearing. It's quite a shame about the corrosion on my wheel bearing because other than that it spanned quite freely, but you can see the little high spots and things that caused damage to the wheel speed sensor, so it was time to come off. But now we're left with the wheel bearing. All you want to do is grab your M18 or 18mm spline socket, get it in the middle, get a breaker bar on the end of it, and well, work at it to remove it. So off mine comes in 3, 2, 1, and with the wheel bearing removed you can now see the extent of the corrosion on the back. This really was ready to be replaced by the looks of this. Good job we've got new ones. And you can see the damage that was caused to the wheel speed sensor. You can actually see the electrical contact inside of it, so it was, well, yeah, really ready to be changed. So I then went and just removed the new new wheel speed sensor, ready to put on the new wheel speed sensor. But we're now ready to put on the wheel bearing. So 180 Newton meters plus half a turn on the torque wrench. I can't give you a estimate on how this should feel without a torque wrench, and I wouldn't like to do something like that without one because this is a pretty critical part of the car. Then in with the new wheel speed sensor, much better this time. You can actually see the clearance behind it and what's supposed to happen, and you can see how that rust spot would have caused the first one to, well, break, and the second one, and so on. But I think at this point I need to take a few moments to explain how we got to this stage. So if we go back to about a year ago, here's me driving in my car thinking, what is that noise? Anyway, I diagnosed it as a sticking caliper, and so what you saw earlier on in the video with this brake caliper here, I actually bought over a year ago. Of course, fast forward to the present day and the wheel speed sensor has gone, so what better time to replace the caliper than when I'm doing the wheel speed sensor and wheel bearing all at the same time. Now, as we had the carrier off, and we've got a carrier and caliper rebuild kit with all new seals in, I thought this would be a good time to take out the slides and replace them. At this point, I was thinking, is it really worth me bleeding all the brakes and changing the calipers, or do you think it might just be these slides not returning or returning to their original position when they shouldn't be doing that? So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this rebuild kit and I'm going to replace all the seals and clean out all the slides, clean out this carrier, and hopefully that should solve the sticking caliper issue, so then I don't have to take off the caliper, put the new one on, bleed all the brakes, yada yada yada.
It's sticking on excess grease.
So someone in the past has just put too much grease in it.
It almost creates a suction and sucks it back. You do lubricate them, but just lightly lubricate them, and then when you do a brake change, whip them out and lightly lubricate them. If you overfill them, it's a form of hydraulicking.
Hydraulic lock. Yeah.
And it goes over that end. In she goes. And over that end. So you brake, release, brake, release. They're not sticking. Alright.
Thanks to my dad for some wise words of wisdom there. So now we've got two nice rebuilt clean slides, and also you see these little anti-rattle plates. Well, I cleaned those out and put a little bit of copper grease on so the pad can move freely. And then it's time to just get rebuilding. So my cap's back on my wheel bearing here. My disc is now back on with that T27 Torx bit, and you can see the disc spins freely. Then get the carrier back in position. Come around the back and get in those horrible bolts again, make sure they're nice and tight. I had no chance of getting the torque wrench in here to torque these up to the correct setting, so I just did them friggin' tight. And then using a caliper rewind tool, just push the piston back in so you can get it over your brake discs. Next, we're going to line the caliper up inside the brake carrier, get those nicely rebuilt slides back in and tighten them back up using the 13 and 15mm spanners. After that, we're pretty much all back together and ready for the wheel to go on. So I was just checking everything moved freely, and all was well in the world. Put the handbrake on. And then let it off. So, hold up. Replacing those slides didn't do anything by the looks of it. When I'm pressing the brake pedal, the disc is spinning, and when cycling the handbrake on and off, the disc is now stuck. But I needed the car to get to and from work, so I put everything back together and decided to drive it anyway. I hope you're all enjoying these excellent pictures. I think they deserve a like and a subscribe, so please do me a favour. But I suppose there was one thing to gain from this. We have just set off and we are light free. Get in! So we've probably jumped forward 3 or 4 weeks now, but anyway, look at this. So the brake discs have actually got a nice big score line down the middle I can feel with my fingers, and to be honest, these are looking a bit worn and tatty anyway, but the car has been sat here for a week. I've not been driving it because I've gone ahead and just bought new discs. So everything is back in the car and back to my parents to sort out all of that other stuff. See you there. And so we are back again. The wheels are now back off. There's no point in showing me taking those off, but you can see the discs are, yeah, not great at all. And to be honest, the pad's about dead as well. So I mean, I don't know how it's got that bad that quickly, but anyway, I'm pretty much just going to go in and do everything I just did, but this time the wheel bearing doesn't have to come off. So at least that's something. It's just a case of dropping all that caliper off and replacing bits. So, well, let's go. So as you can probably remember, it's a case of getting those guides out again, but I just wanted to check that all these bolts would come out easily, and this connects the brake pipe up and the brake fluid kind of sits inside the pipe. So before getting these two slides out, I thought, you know what, I'll try and get this pipe out first and just ease it off to make sure everything's going to be okay. And well, you know, guess what? So this little tiny bolt down here, which I think is an 11mm, has started to round off. It is literally seized into the caliper. In hindsight, I should have bought another one of these when I bought this caliper, but I don't have one. And well, because that's rounded off, there's nothing really more I can do with it. So I have bought another pipe on eBay, and well, we're gonna have to try it again next week. So see you next week.
One eternity later.
So I am back, and with the correct parts for the job this time. We have a new brake pipe, and I've actually got 2 brake pipe spanners. So let's try again. So back off with the guides again, the 13 and the 15mm spanners just to loosen them off. And then once those guides were out, it's time to loosen off the handbrake cable, and then after that the caliper is now free. And now I can use my nice new crow's foot or brake pipe spanners to remove these two nuts on the brake pipe. I made sure to open my brake fluid reservoir under the bonnet before I did this and clamp off the brake pipe to stop any unnecessary fluid from, well, leaking out. At this point I wanted to make sure the swap could be done as quickly as possible, so I got the new caliper ready, just nipped this pipe back up again whilst I fit it up just to make sure everything was okay. And, well, as it turns out, that caliper I ordered a year ago was for the passenger side. We needed a driver's side one.
Eventually.
So we are back again with the correct side this time. This is a factory refurbished one, OEM quality. And look, it actually looks the same as the other one this time. So you know what they say, third time's the charm. Let's get it on. So this time, this bastard was coming off. Back on with the crow's foot or brake pipe spanners, just undoing them, just getting ready to take the whole lot out, and then just gently wiggle it away from the pipework. With that out, I then just slid out the brake pads ready to put the new ones in. So then, once the old brake pads are out, it's time to put the new caliper and new pipe in. So it's just a case of reversive removal, screwing all your bolts and everything again, and then after that it's time to whip out the brake bleeder. We've just got a little hand pump that we've had knocking about for ages, and this is just plugged straight onto the bleed nipple, and then you just pump out all the air slowly but surely. So you may be wondering, why are you putting all this back together if you've still got to change the brake discs? And you may be thinking, what a moron, and to be honest, you'd be right. So this caliper is now back on, all bolted up and pretty much ready to go. We just need to bleed it inside the car. What you might notice is the discs are still the same as they were before. And that is because if you go around this side, we did anticipate to change the wheel bearing and the discs and pads and calipers all at once. Obviously, because I bought the wrong caliper, we now have a new one of these, but that's not binding, so we're not going to mess with that. There's not really any point. We're just going to leave that until it does start to bind, and then do it then, or maybe do it when I do a brake fluid flush. But the problem is, these bolts behind here, the two spline bolts that kind of hold all of this unit together, but they are completely seized in. We've tried the Ugga Dugga with some impact sockets on them, and it is not shifting. And with a ramp, you can obviously get underneath it and swing off it, so you can get a bit more leverage and a bit more torque to actually undo the bolts in the first place. But on the driveway, we spent a good hour or so trying to do that, and it's not moving at all. So we're going to accept defeat, and we're going to just replace the pads on here. At least I know on the other side of the caliper is no longer seized, and the rear brake will work, and there's not going to be any uneven wear. And I know that I've got the discs, I've got the wheel bearing to go on, and I've got a fresh caliper for that when it does finally go on. So quite maybe a little bit anticlimactic, but we're just going to get these pads in and then we're done. So yeah, let's get these pads in. And these are the old pads that came off the car. You can kind of see the uneven wear, so these were definitely ready. And so after a kind of anticlimactic result, I am now back at home. I've just driven the car for like 10 miles or so, half an hour, and honestly it feels like a new car. Like, I never understood that a binding brake caliper could have such an effect on how the car actually drives. It feels like it vibrates a lot less and, well, drives a lot better, really. Now, of course, I am no mechanic. I just like having a go. I just like seeing if I can do it, and if I can't, no worries, I've learned something in the process. But in this instance, I think the best option is to get it over to JBM or Valhalla Performance and get them to do the brake fluid flush, and also, whilst they've got it in the air, see if they can, well, get that bolt undone because they have proper ramps, and replace the discs on, well, both sides. So how much have I spent on parts for the rear of this car, and how much of it have I actually used? So first things first, we've got the caliper that I bought over a year ago that I never actually fitted. Then we've got two wheel speed sensors, as the first one broke on the dodgy wheel bearing. So then we've got the wheel bearing for that side, and then the wheel bearing for the other side, which we've not actually used, followed by the brake fluid, followed by the carrier rebuild kit. I only used two tiny things out of that, so I'm going to class it as didn't use it. Then I couldn't get the brake pipe out of the caliper, so I had to buy a new brake pipe. Then realised that I'd bought the wrong caliper, so I had to buy the right one. And finally, the brake discs. I thought mine were too far gone to reuse, but I was wrong. Also, can't forget sanity. Definitely used a lot of that. So it turns out I spent £201.19 on stuff I didn't even use, and £141 on stuff that I actually did use, coming to a grand total of £342.19. But on the bright side, we can use this stuff in the future if anything does go wrong, or I could even sell it on, and I've learned a hell of a lot in the process. But I think I've kept you guys long enough, so if you've been with me since the start, thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think of my drawings in the comments below. Don't forget to drop us a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one where we've got plenty more nice content to come.